So they have dozens of ships lined up outside of.
Is on.
They have dozens of ships lined up waiting to be emptied, and that means that Costco can't get its imported cheeses like Gouda and blue cheese and other such foreign things. So there are ships full of cheese waiting to be unloaded.
I'm glad cheese keeps pretty well.
Just ages more, right?
Yeah.
Depends on the cheese, of course.
The good cheese all ages well.
Ooh, AJ, do you want to be the live stream manager here and make sure live chat doesn't get too rowdy? Your audio's not working, sir. I think you're muted.
I was muted by default.
There you go.
Okay. So live chat, are we talking about the text chat?
That's correct.
Okay, I will keep an eye on the text chat, sir.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess this means I can ditch this particular tab. If we can stop stalking AJ on Facebook. Beautiful family.
Oh, we're stalking me on Facebook?
Adorable. We were just like, AJ's doing a live stream right now. What's up with him?
Oh yeah. So I meant to end it a little earlier, but I ran over.
That is A-okay.
I'm trying to do 2 live streams every day because I was doing this Beyond Code Bootcamp, and I was like writing out scripts and material and trying to do something that was super professional, and I just got stuck in analysis paralysis, and then I finally was like, okay, this is something I really care about, I really want to do, so I'm going to break it by just doing a crappy job, doing stuff off the cuff, and then I'll get some feedback on material and ideas and understand things better, and then I'll go back to the uber professional content, because it takes forever. I don't know if any of you guys have done YouTubing, but if you want to create a video that is actually captures attention, it takes a long time to prepare and research and make it concise and do all the things I'm not good at.
Yeah, that's definitely something you help people, you pay people to help you do, right? If you can. But other than that, you have a huge technical hurdle if you have to do it all by yourself.
Well, there's nothing.
If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Let me see if I can print something.
Tell that to all the teenagers trying to become YouTube stars.
Color.
I already am a YouTube star in my soul. I believe in myself is what I'm trying to say.
It's a little bit of overconfidence there.
Oh, wait a minute.
Right.
Chuck, I don't know if you know this, but we are hearing your attempts to print something in color.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I thought I was.
You have your video muted. You don't have
might
your audio
be.
muted.
I figured you might have thought that you were muted, but not.
Yes, well, thank
been
you
aware.
for letting me know. Gee, I could have said something very embarrassing.
Possibly, happens to the best of us.
And the rest of us.
And me too.
All right. Well, AJ, if people start hollering on YouTube for some crazy reason, because suddenly we're popular and people are actually commenting there, feel free to moderate, and that will be great when we get more and more people in. Actually, I thought it's been kind of cool because we've had people from other states attend these meetings sort of on the side. Not many, but it's kind of fun. All right. So we are 15 minutes in. I'd say people that are going to get here late are going to be late. We should get this ship sailing. So, hi, everybody. I am Eric Gubler, one of the OG hosts for this meetup, although AJ has been very chivalrous and helping me out with most of the recent meetups. That's been great for me. So kudos to AJ. I saw that we didn't have a meetup planned still 3 days ago, and that's definitely not AJ's fault. I've been leaving everything to him and not actually being a co-organizer for a while. So I said, you know what? I'm going to earn my keep, and let's get something organized for this Thursday. So here we are. The topic I'm going to be presenting on is one that it will help everybody hopefully level up their Rust if they don't know about it already, and that is about how you write docs in Rust. Rust has an awesome built-in solution for documentation, and we're going to show you all the ins and outs. Maybe not hugely deep detail like some people in RustConf get into, because those are people that actually maintain rustdoc, but there should be plenty of interesting content for everybody. I know that for most people, there's probably going to be some new material here, and whenever you have questions, feel free to interrupt and ask. A lot of this is going to be ad hoc. So if I'm going on a tangent, AJ or somebody else can feel free to say, whoa, Eric, rabbit hole, let's get out. So you're muted, AJ.
And I was also on the YouTube tab, not the Jitsi tab. I said the rabbit holes are what make it fun.
If they're good rabbit holes, then let's go down them.
Everybody get a shovel.
Everybody get a shovel. All right. So I'm going to beef up my text here a little bit. Is that good resolution for everybody? They can see when I type cargo, get good, you know, stuff like that.
I'm not seeing your screen.
Yeah, I don't see your screen. Yeah.
Oh, right. I need to share my screen. I stopped sharing my screen. See, this is good. Kicking the tires. All right. How's that?
Looks good.
Wonderful. All right. So you're all excited about Rust. You decide, I want to make my first crate, and you realize, oh, I should probably document that stuff. Rust, as I said before, has a great solution for having docs, but you got to know how to use it, right? So let's just kick the tires real fast and get a super basic flow going, and we can dive into why it works, how it works in just a second. But let's say I go into my workspace, I go new Utah Rust doc demo. Let's go in there. This makes a nice binary package template for us. So if we were to look at the current contents of our file tree, here's what we got. We just got a main, but we don't want a main. Most of the time when we're writing documentation, it's going to be in libraries, right? Now, we're almost certainly, if we have an application that gets complicated enough, we're going to be writing our own docs for our own internal library layers. So it's not bad to start in main. But I'm just going to quickly make a lib.rs. We can do some funky stuff here. Let's do something that actually tries to detect a file named blah in the current working directory. So if find blah, have return a Boolean, right? So I have this awesome function. Somebody wants to consume it. So if I were to say file out, if this works, then it'll return okay. Something rather easy. So let's make a little test program in here. Call our find blah function. So I say, is blah here? We'll do a debug print of find blah. All right, let's see if I can write working code the first time. Nope.
Pub.
Need to pub it. That's right.
I don't think that the screen is being shared in the way we expect on YouTube.
Okay, how's that?
It is not. It shows the gallery view, and so your screen is tiny.
Okay.
I don't know why.
I had to click on the screen and then it went full size.
Yeah, that's what I did. I just clicked on his screen.
Well, let's see. Is there a way that we can fix that? I do not know.
Well, it did go to. Well, there you go. All right. It seems to work now somehow.
Interesting.
So when
I
other
was
people
slow.
speak, it like myself, it will throw whatever. So like now I will be able to see myself talking in a moment. But if everybody else is silent and you're talking, then it'll show your screen instead.
I see. So in other words, everybody shut your pie holes.
Hold on. Could you click and pin it? Or there's no way to pin? Or 3 dots and pin? No.
Let's see. So I see 3 dots on everybody else. I don't see a menu item for actually pinning somebody as the speaker. Oh, there we go. And I could also make sure that I'm in there too, in the bottom right corner.
Fancy. What is this magic?
Awesome.
I know, right? Okay, so we have our fancy little function that will run swimmingly. Let's open our lib.rs again. Main.rs for reference. Just keep these tabs open. All right. So if I were to write some super basic docs, I use triple slashes. And I'd say this is find blah. This function looks for a file called and if it finds it, then it returns true. If not, it returns false. More docs and code. Honestly, I find that pretty ideal, but that's a whole other tangent for another day, I suppose. So how do we actually write and consume these docs? Well, if you run cargo doc, then it does something. Actually, what it does is it'll build something inside a target/doc, right? It has a whole bunch of preset assets that it puts in here. The main thing of interest is that it will actually make a folder specific to the top level crate that you're compiling, and you can open it. Type my command right here. That's sort of tedious though, especially if you're confused about what you're building. So often you could do cargo doc -- open, and that will net you the same thing. So yeehaw, cool. And look, find blah. Look at all this nice documentation that we get out of the box. We get links letting us go anywhere in the path up to this symbol that we're looking at. We even can examine things in the signature that's declared here, so I can click on bool and stuff, right? And say, all right, here's my primitive type bool. Neat. So this is just scratching the surface, getting an end-to-end docs consumption going. There are tons of fancy features here. So we could go bottom up about how this works, what's actually getting called into the hood if anybody's interested, or we can just launch into additional features here. Anybody have any votes? I would vote
Additional features.
Additional features are the most important part. So, all right. Well, then let's go ahead.
I'm particularly interested to know what the conventions are for, like, so for example, resident Go guy. In Go, we have, when you're documenting a package, the sentence starts with package, package name, verb, blah, 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 blah. And then when we're documenting a function, we say name of function, verb, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, so when you want to document something, there's also if it's a package that has multiple files in it, you create a doc.go and you put your package documentation in that and your function documentation in the individual files, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one thing I'm really interested to know is, like, what are best practices for how to name or naming conventions, short description, long description, example, test, that sort of thing. Does Rust have run? It has runnable examples, right? Like you can put something in the docs and then it can be part of the
runnable
test.
examples.
Yeah.
Right. We've got lots of fun stuff that we can do in here. So to your point about, okay, I have a package, where do I put documentation when I need to put stuff down? So often when you are starting to write package documentation, where you want to start is top level module documentation. So in our lib.rs, for instance, if we start the file with this //bang here, this is top level module documentation. Look at me, adore me, right? So if we were to say cargo doc -- open again, then we'll get this. Look, this is the top level. This is top level module documentation.
Do you
Cool
have
beans,
to
right?
proceed each line with that same comment icon? Or
That is correct.
okay.
Now, you'll notice in here, I've already started using some formatting. These backticks make inline code blocks, right? This is because all of the documentation that is delimited by these documentation slashes use Markdown. We get all of the fun, fancy stuff that comes with basic. Actually, it is. What's that common standardization of Markdown? I forget.
GitHub?
But, it's not GitHub. I think it's
Talking about Common Mark or something like that.
Common Mark. I believe that this is Common Mark is what it's using. There are some GitHub features that are not present in here. So for instance, if we were to try to make a table, I don't believe that this would work.
Well, that's not a GitHub feature. The table's plain old Daring Fireball Markdown.
It is not supported in all Markdown parsers, though. I believe that under the hood,
Tables
we're
are
using-
GitHub flavored Markdown, and Common Mark is the standard RFC spec for Markdown.
yeah, so let's see here. Tables do not work here. So yes, tables are a GitHub-centric thing, unfortunately. I think that it'd be great if we could get this added. In fact,
It's not GitHub-centric. It's supported in Common Mark, but not everyone implements it.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a bit of a Markdown nerd because
It's great.
Yeah,
So
it looks
we
like
can do
tables
stuff.
weren't in the original though, like I thought it was. So
They were not.
sorry about that.
So we can do stuff like links. So if we were to say, hey, for more details, see youtube.com, right? So if we were to rebuild our docs, doc -- open here, you'll notice that not all of the contents of the documentation for Find Blar being presented in the top level module docs. If we click in, then it shows more content, right? So that's pretty cool. Oh, the link did not present the way that I expected it to. That is interesting. Is that because of the period? Pretty lame if it was. No, it's not. So let's see. YouTube.
It doesn't require the brackets like Markdown.
Not necessarily. There are some convenient anchor links that are already provided built in that are hidden from view. So we can get into some of those details too. Right now, I just want to make sure. This is probably me getting into the weeds here.
Is anybody else having trouble seeing the video?
Yeah.
It's so low resolution I can't read it.
Oh no! Let's see here.
Yeah, it's like a good maybe 45p.
Yeah, this says SD on it right now.
It's not
Manage
that good.
video quality.
Just remember, folks, you can develop Rust on a potato.
Oh, well, if this is undermining the whole presentation, then
It was all good up till a minute ago.
yeah.
If you stop sharing your screen and reshare it, I'm sure it will resolve itself because the stream will be basically turned off and on again.
Let's see here. Share my screen again. How about that?
It is sort of improved. And now it's back to bad.
No.
Oh, man.
Are
Try
you?
turning off your video.
Can you hardwire in?
How about that?
Looks better.
Looks better? That's all right. Nobody wanted to see my mug anyway.
I'm just seeing AJ.
Well, if I keep jabbering and I force my screen to show up because I'm the only one talking, does that work?
I got a blank gray screen.
It works for me.
Okay, well, I'm not important. Keep going.
And you can watch on YouTube if it doesn't work for you on Jitsi, because YouTube is the canonical what's actually going on.
And do you have the link for that
Yeah, I'll give it to you right now.
in the chat?
Yep.
Let's see.
Yeah, because when your Jitsi will do weird things different from the way the presenter Jitsi is working.
All right. So let's say we start wanting to add some fancy stuff. And we say, actually, let's find blah, but only if it's a file, right? We can start adding something like a configuration structure. That does make it harder to listen. You could probably just mute your tab, the YouTube tab, and then talk here.
There is a 5-second delay.
Well, this is what we get by riding by the seat of our pants. So
Right, keep going.
All right. So if we were to say we wanted to add a configuration struct to this, we get some interesting stuff just out of the box. First off, we can get links to find blah here. In fact, we can actually cover it in backticks when, and it will just know what to do with this anchor reference here in Markdown. So what that is that this is semantically equivalent to saying, using these anchor references down below. So if I were to say find blah something something something, right? Before Rust 1.48 came out, it was this was only an experimental feature, and if you wanted to ship stable documentation, you had to know the awkward file and anchor conventions, HTML path anchor conventions for locating individual items. Well, no more. All you have to do is this and make sure the symbol matches roughly what you'd write in Rust here, and you should be good to go. So let's see how this gets used. That's unused right now. That's okay. We're going to ignore that warning for just a second. So if we do cargo doc -- open again, our config just starts showing up. And look, we got links to other stuff that we've written too. So this is by far one of the most handy things. In fact, if you do something bad and name this wrong, you were pretty sure that the guy said they'd be implementing a function called find blarg. Then when we do cargo doc, it should actually warn us. It says, oh, unresolved link to find blarg. This looks like a rusty path, but this doesn't resolve anything. It's a link called broken introdoc links. So this by itself is extremely handy. When you combine this with something like cargo dead links, you can get a more comprehensive check for all of your linking. So this works with the introdoc, broken introdocs link lint. And then this will check, this can actually check that none of your other links that go outside of documentation are broken too. So something you can add to your continuous integration, something you can run locally before you publish a package. Very handy here. So highly recommend. This also comes with the dead links binary, which I also recommend. That's kind of tangential to what we're doing here. So it helps us fix this sort of stuff. And cargo doc again, we won't get that error. Yay! Now, one of the things that is very important in Rust documentation that you will see all the time. So if you do, let's look at option, for instance. I'm using the wonderful Ultimate Search extension for Rust, by the way. Highly recommended. Definitely want that auto update. So I can say rs option. Here we go. You'll notice that in a lot of these sections here, there is an example section and some code run inside. So in this case, oh yes, Nathan is also pointing out we don't necessarily have to do find blah here. We could also say the find blah function and just keep the path in here. This will resolve in the same way as the previous form that we showed off. Any questions about that so far?
I just wanted to mention something. Hoo also makes the ultimate Go search extension.
Awesome. So he's something of a rock star then.
Well, it's this company. They make developer tools. I was checking it in the Chrome store before I installed it because I don't like the idea of, the thing that has my passwords and all of that to just have a random extension from an anybody. So I was looking at the site there.
Right. So we were talking about examples here in the option type. For most of the methods here, you'll notice that there's an example section and some sample code. Well, this has a run button. Kind of crazy, right? This will actually link to the Rust playground if you configure things correctly. We'll get to that later. But this is actually checked on compilation if you do a cargo test, right? So if you do cargo test all, we can do stuff like, okay, let's do, it will assume backticks without a type R Rust code, so you don't need to type Rust here. If we go in here, we can say assert equals, or just assert find blah, fig default. This is a convention for using the default trait, which we have not implemented, but guess what? It's going to catch it real fast. So if you were to do cargo test docs, cargo test doc, this will actually yell at us. This will say, cannot find function find blah in the scope. Oh, this is it's because we need to import this. Interesting. We can import it up here and not show it to people by saying use Utah rustdoc demo find blah. So this octothorpe here in front is hiding this chunk of code. This is very useful when you have some maybe arbitrary setup that you need to do, or when you're repeating examples and just showing different chunks of what's important and you don't want to rewrite, you don't want to think about more than just copy pasting. Very helpful in this regard. So if we were to do cargo, let's do cargo doc again. Let's refresh our docs and show what's going on. We have our example section. And here's our example code. This gets type checked. So let's get out of here for a second. So cargo test doc. Failed to resolve the use of, config. Okay, we need to get config in here too. Right. Let's do that. Cargo test docs. Oh, nope. Cargo test doc. All right. No function or associated item named default found. Oh, well, great. That's good to know. This actually caught an issue. I did my example-driven development, like somebody here is writing in the Jitsi comments. Yeah, so we can write exactly how we want client code to look. This will type check it for us. So we can do impl default for config. So say, give me a self out of this default function and say self lamb. Oh, this should compile now. And it runs our test just like in cargo test. Sweet. Nathan is pointing out we could do derive default here. And that will make for shorter code. If we start adding fields that may not necessarily make sense for their default. So if we were to go, maybe we don't want that, right? Anyway, getting into weeds there.
I'm trying to be subtle, but you're so good at noticing all of my comments and responding to them. Maybe I should just speak them out loud.
Yeah, I'm pretty obsessive as a presenter. So, questions about this so far? Comments? What has caught your interest the most?
Honestly, that search extension was awesome. I installed it. I tried it out. I love it. That's amazing.
It's great. It will cache a search index for all of the standard library. It will also cache a search index for any crates that you're visiting on docs.rs. So you'll notice something fun about docs.rs. The docs generated here look exactly like the kind that we've gotten here. Well, that's because it uses rustdoc too. In fact, if you publish a crate, then you get your docs published for freebies on docs.rs. Docs.rs just scrapes all of crates.io, finding crates that it hasn't compiled yet and publishes docs, and it will eventually find yours when you make your publication. So this is a great way to make something interesting, get it out to the world and say, hey, take a look. So Karthik is asking if this is NeoVim. This is not NeoVim. This is MSys2 and vanilla Vim with a metric crap ton of configuration. But I'm a big fan of NeoVim. So there's lots of different places that we can put doc comments. When you're inside of a file, you will often use inner doc comments, which are / bang, right? Indicating we are going to apply these docs to the thing that this is inside of. This can only be applied at the top level of whatever scope we're in. You can do stuff like, hey, here's my module. Here are some submodule docs. And this is great for transplanting submodules. I would definitely not recommend trying to do it on functions, although I think you can.
Why would you want to use it on...
I don't know why you want to do that. I'm just saying this is a way you can shoot yourself in the foot very oddly.
So the convention is to only use it for modules because you can't put something in front of a module file.
Correct. Let's build our docs again. Now, just to prove to you that I'm not lying to you, let's go into find blah. Here's some more text. It's in there. I don't know why you'd do this, especially I don't know why you'd mix and match it. That's just weird.
Yeah, just put your stuff before it unless it's the module doc.
Now, I could see somebody justifying, hey, I don't know what I'm getting documentation about until I see this particular function, right? But that is not the convention in Rust. So if you're going to do it, please be consistent. Know that it's available to you. But the vast majority of the Rust ecosystem and community tend to use this outer form for everything but modules at the top of the file.
Okay, one more time because I missed it. What is the difference? Can you show me the documentation? How does it show up differently?
It does not show up differently. It shows up differently in your source code.
Oh, okay, I get it. So / means the comment goes above the thing. The / bang means the comment goes inside of the thing. And the reason that you would do it at the top level of a module or a package is because there is no above the thing because it is at top level itself.
That's correct.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So don't do it Python style. Do it Go style.
Exactly. Hey, hammer it in. Move line 17 up to the equivalent spot in the outer doc.
Yep. Let's do that. So we're going to change our bang to a slash.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! There's the equivalent thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You can start if you have paths that you may not necessarily have in this scope here. Actually, sorry, I'm going on a tangent. You can use any symbol that is currently in scope in here, by the way. So if you have something that you're already using, like file is a great thing. Use it, right? If we were to rebuild these docs, then this would show up here. You don't have to qualify it. It's basically a question of, is it in the current scope? Did you import it? Or is it in the prelude? If it is, great, you can use it. If you need to use something more esoteric, then you can just say, hey, here's the option. We can recompile that. It should just work. Wasn't mentioned anywhere else in the text. So here you go.
That's when that other format comes in handy. Just put it in the friends instead of the square, and you can have it look like
Right.
you want.
Do we have a way to document macros yet?
Macros are documented just like everything else. So if you were to use a macro rules macro, which I'm assuming is what you're talking about, do a thing. Then we'll just make a dummy thing saying Utah Rust is the bee's knees. You can document it just like anything else. This macro is dangerous. Only use it after your lunch has already been eaten.
And when your EpiPen is available.
Your EpiPen is available. So if we do macro export here, making sure that that is actually public, go cargo doc, rebuild our docs. Oh, this is warning me that I did something dumb up here. Hint. Don't worry, we'll fix it. If we go back up to the top level crate docs, it made another macros section for us automatically. Do a thing. Yeah, and macros are kind of a funny thing because in the declaration that it will show you by default, it will show you all of the matching rules, which can look pretty ugly when you do things like, let's take a look at struct ops. Well, I guess this is technically claps thing. Exports use clap. Arginum. This is a particularly complicated macro that I have worked with recently. So this is something that you wrap around a bunch of enum declarations. This can be very distracting for a reader. So make sure when you are documenting macro rules that you are giving examples as to how something can be used. This is a particularly important place that you would use the examples section, right? So speaking of sections, there is a wonderful book online called Rust API Guidelines. So you can find that at this link here. I'll put it into the chat on YouTube and I'll put it in the chat here. This has a wonderful section on documentation telling you, hey, here is an ideal you can strive for in all of your documentation in Rust. So some of these things we have already talked about, like, hey, use C example. This is very helpful because, I mean, examples in general are very helpful, right? And don't just make dumb examples, make actually good ones. Show different use cases like in here, where this is when we are demonstrating how is_sum works on option, it's actually giving an exhaustive demonstration of how this function works, right? When you get true and you get false. You can't do that with every function because sometimes the domain or the range is too great to demonstrate with a concise set of examples. But making sure you demonstrate edge cases can be very important. So like if we were to look at something crazy deep, like non-null, there is a ton of documentation just around being safe. And here's what you do and you do not do, right? In this case, they tend not to use examples because doing something unsafe in an example is a dumb idea. Invoking undefined behavior in your test suite is a dumb idea. Please don't do it. But one of the other standards sections for questions like safety, how do I help somebody actually write unsafe code correctly, is there's a standard safety section, right? And here's a best practice for you. If you put an unsafe tag on one of your functions, make darn sure you have a safety section. So that is safety here. Safety considerations. Unsafe functions should be documented with a safety section that explains all invariants that the caller is responsible for upholding. So this is your chance to say, you basically want a statement of the form, it is safe to call this function when blah, blah, blah. This can be in the form of a paragraph, like in here. These suggested things, this particular example for safety docs uses a paragraph. Often when I'm at work and I want to be brief, I'll just say condition 1, condition 2. You could say something like, this field of config is never set to a value at the same time as some other field. So that can be very important. Other conventions that I would strongly recommend you follow is rather than pollute complicated links inside of docs, often rustaceans like myself will actually just read source code. And a way that we can help people read source code in this particular flavor of Markdown is by preferring to use anchor links like this. Not anchor links, I forget what these are called, footnote links. So that is my recommendation for you. Let's see, Jacob Hansman. Does it yell at you if you don't? I'm assuming you're talking about missing a safety doc. So yes, thank you, Nate, for throwing this out there. If you have a missing safety section, you actually can enable a lint called missing safety doc in Clippy. And it will say, hey, don't do that. That's bad. So if we were to run this in Clippy right now, let's remove our safety section. We have unsafe, which, by the way, other best practices thing here. If you have unsafe, make sure you tell people why it's safe. This is safe because we are guaranteed to be in a valid state. Make it a little more descriptive than that, but that's kind of the flow, right? Whenever you write unsafe, make sure you are justifying it. So you can have standalone comments inside of an example. I'm getting a question from Peter in here. So if you were to say, check that exists, no other questions asked. Do cargo doc, rebuild this. To our find blah thing. We now have a comment inside of our code example. So there you go. These are great questions. So let's run Clippy real fast. For you to run cargo Clippy, I think style lints are enabled by default. Oh, right. We need to tweak our main to match the new fancy argument that we did in there. So if we do config default, we don't forget to import it. Cargo Clippy. Oh, well, it looks like that's not enabled. So let's go into our lib.rs and let's enable this lint. So I think I had this in a separate window. I did. So if we want to enable this in Clippy, attributes actually follow this same convention where if you have a bang after the octothorpe in your attribute, it will apply to the thing that this is within. So for the top level of a crate, for instance, this is absolutely necessary, much like /bang. So if we do warn Clippy missing safety doc, make this a warning. Say cargo Clippy IP Clippy. There we go. Oh, why is this not showing up? I'm probably missing something. Is there a cargo Clippy doc that I'm missing? See Rust, Clippy.
It really looks like it ought to be catching it.
Yeah, maybe this is because we're not just building the library. This might be.
Oh, maybe.
Oh, that's not it. Might be because we have this warning here too. Let's do let equals config, or we could just do _config, avoid that warning entirely. Interesting.
Weird.
There we go. Cache problem.
What did you do? I missed it. Did you clean?
Yep, I just did cargo clean basically.
Okay.
Yep, so this will warn you. Ideally in CI would have caught that even if a developer didn't, because CI should be compiling from scratch. So that's a bug. Sorry, guys. Yeah, honestly, Clippy is a great tool. Definitely would highly recommend using stuff that comes out of the box. Now, I don't think we needed that lint on here. Let's try removing it. Yes. So if you were to do cargo clean, yep, that warns by default. Great. So we don't need to enable that. Just for clarity, for everybody, you do not need to enable that. That is an out-of-the-box safety lint. So great pointers there. Other interesting things that you may want to know about is the documentation field can be configured explicitly in your in the package that you submit to crates.io. You don't need to do that nowadays. In the past, this might have been necessary, but by default now, crates.io will link to your documentation when you publish a crate. So you really are just getting lots of free stuff out of the box. Let's see, what other items are in here that might be interesting? There's some style stuff using question mark. I don't think that should be surprising to anybody. Errors and panics. These are also some standard sections, just telling people like, hey, if this has the potential to panic, tell people about it, right? We can see this if we look back at option again. So if you go option, there are places like unwrap, where it says, hey, this panics if the self value is equal to none. Pretty self-descriptive, right? Oh, this also brings in something else that's fancy. Much like if we were to write a test function We say test, assert, true, right? We in a Rust test harness, unit test harness, we could also write should panic underneath a test thing. This should work just great. So if we do cargo test, then this test ran okay. This is freaking out because we marked this as unsafe in our documentation. So this is type checking for us yet again. Yay! But in the same way, we are able to write should panic on here. So if we do cargo doc, then that should work. So if we do cargo test doc, find blah, test executable succeeded, but it's marked should panic. Excellent. We successfully failed. So yes, there's also some other stuff, like if you want to make sure that this does not run, or you just want to make sure that this compiles, right? You can do no run, which actually this is particularly appropriate for our use case, because if we're doing stuff in the file system, we usually don't have any guarantees about file layouts or ability to change files in a test environment, right? So if this were running in CI, for instance, I would not usually want my library to be creating random files in random places. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, especially if we were to do like, remove dir all target in CI in one of the tests. Well, crap, now we can't ship anything because we deleted all of our binaries after the fact. So yeah, don't do that. That is exactly the sort of thing that no run is useful for. There are lots of other testing tools. Ed Page, who until recently was a frequent attendee here, actually has written a bunch of tools pioneering stuff like this for command line tools, for instance. Anyway, this is for libraries, right? Not command line tools. We have no run. We also have should panic, as we saw. If you want to disable something from running, oftentimes that's because this is actually text and you don't want somebody to run it, right? The other thing you can do is you can just say, hey, please do not compile this at all. So I believe that is called no compile. Ignore. That's what this is. Ignore. Much like it matches the ignore attribute that you would mark test functions with. So if you do ignore, and this says this is Rust source code, you should not even try to compile it. If you wanted to compile, then you could just do no run. If you want it to fail compilation, obviously you should run that, right? You can also type compile fail. So these are some interesting options. These work as a comma separated list, by the way. So you could technically bind these, although it does not make sense. There are some other attribute combinations that do make sense. So if we were to say compile fail, assert eq, 2 and true, that should just horribly fail. There we go. Failed successfully. Boom. But yeah, there is a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with rustdoc. I'd say between links and showing examples, this makes it one of the most powerful documentation generators I have seen in any tool chain. The fact that it is standard in Rust, I think, is a testament to values that Rustaceans have with making things accessible and continuing with the attitude of everybody can have nice things. So I am more than happy to get into weeds on further rustdoc stuff, but just in case people need to start dropping, because we've been here an hour. This has been a lot of fun. I'm excited to keep answering questions.
Nice.
Well done. Well done.
So,
Yes.
what other rabbit holes are interesting to everybody?
Show the no depths. You always need the no depths option for non-trivial cases.
The no depth option?
No depths, no dependencies.
Oh, yes. So cargo doc
Maybe
no
it doesn't
depths.
bother you, but it drives me insane when all those dependencies are listed in your documentation, and it's big.
Yes. So by default, when you add documentation, so if we were to use the wonderful cargo edit package, it adds the cargo add command. So if we were to say cargo add struct opt, we do cargo doc. This will not only document our crate, it will also document everything in our dep tree. Just so if we need to refer to other symbols inside of our dependencies because they're publicly exposed, then it will do that for us. This is great for when you are wanting to, for cases like docs.rs, where you just want to include all the docs in one bundle and let somebody peruse the whole thing, right? So let's open our docs. All of the crates that we now depend on are in the bottom left in the sidebar. And we can see all these different crates. So if I want to say, oh yeah, I want to see how struct opt works because I added it to my workspace, but I forgot how to use it. This is great, especially when docs.rs by default will forward you to the most recent version of a crate. Well, as soon as you are using the not the most recent version, it can become more difficult to find, right? It's not nearly as straightforward. You can also have problems with, let's say I forked a version of struct opt and I added some custom stuff because I'm a hacker like that and I think I can make it better. I just haven't upstreamed stuff yet. Well, you can have it point to your fork, but then running to docs.rs isn't going to help you for your custom functionality, right? By running cargo doc open locally, you can inspect any documentation changes that you have made also. So this can be particularly helpful in shared projects in industry too. So you have maybe some deep custom depths or even some dependencies that you have made that have really good documentation, but they're not published to the world, right? So when you are developing, you can just say, cargo doc, I get all the things. This is how I actually prefer doing it. Also because it is very reliable when you're a Vim shaped head like me and you want to find a symbol. You're like, what was that thing called? Arginum? Ah, cool. Here it is, right? And you have a search bar into every symbol in your project. This can be incredibly handy when you like text buffers more than you like messing with advanced IDE features like me. Or if there's ever confusion about what something may refer to, right? Then you can type in search here. This is, I think cargo doc is great. It makes workflows like mine not just possible, but also very enjoyable. Let's see. So yeah, cargo doc no depths is what we just showed. If we wanted to do cargo doc, here is one of my personal favorites, especially when we are dealing with internal dependencies, right? If you are trying to document something that is still within your crate, but it's private, you can do document private items. And this is not going to have any functional difference right now from a crate. Well, in order to see this, we'll have to add a non-public thing in here, right? So if we were to do fun fizz widget for those who love Ratchet and Clank. I'm a hidden gem. This is never used. That's fine. just allow unused here for a second, just for the sake of showing this. So if we do a cargo doc, this will not show up. Not normally. So let's go back to our crate root here. Not showing. But if we do cargo doc -- document private items, I don't believe that there's a shorthand for this, by the way. I'm sorry. Then our other stuff will start showing up. Here's the submodule that we haven't seen until now. Here's Fizz widget. I'm a hidden gem. Well, look, we got it. So this is really great as a maintainer when you are just trying to learn about code. You just want to operate purely on documentation that other people have written, and it's not something that would be published even if you did have a docs host, unless you enabled the private items documentation, right? The wonderful thing about this too is that this will tell you what level of visibility a function will have, so that there shouldn't usually be any confusion around whether something is actually accessible from your programming context or not. So that's super handy.
Eric, at the beginning you had an example and it linked to some STD or some standard documentation nightly. Can we configure whether to link to nightly, stable, beta?
That is a great question. I actually do not know the answer to it off the top of my head. So you're saying like when we did stud option. Let's cargo doc this. Navigate over to our find blah function. So this link that we generated to something built into our tool chain, like the standard library, you'll notice that this points to nightly. That's what Peter's talking about here. I do not know of a way to configure this to point to stable right now. Then again, I haven't done any research. So take that with the grain of salt that it is. Let's do a quick Google search. It's been interesting. rustdoc stable links. We need to add nightly as our SEO.
Well, if it uses your current Rust app default, that's fair enough anyway.
Right. I don't believe I'm using nightly here, but maybe I am. Let's see. Rust app show. I'm on stable right now. Yeah, so it's linking to upstream the hosted docs for nightly Rust here. So you'll notice that the domain is doc.rustlang.org. So I'm not sure of a way to tweak that. I'd be surprised if there wasn't a way to tweak it. Yeah, this is interesting. Now, this feature did spend a lot of its life in nightly before being released. It's been there for years. There are lots of people that had been waiting for a long time when Rust 1.48 came out that said hallelujah when we saw this. So that's probably part of the reason why it points to nightly right now. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there's an upstream issue for getting that configured to just point to stable docs generated. So, Nate, your comments are on fire, sir. All right.
Thanks.
So, does anybody else have any other questions about rustdoc, about other stuff? More than happy to answer. Maybe next time we can go way deep into async stuff. That's really deep. I'm going to need to be a lot more prepared than I was for this to do that sort of thing.
It's probably worth calling out for the control freaks who want to host their own documentation that there are all sorts of options for replacing all of the templates and CSS and logos and things like that if you want to go crazy and customize the look.
Yeah, so I think Saturday. No, what is a project that does this? Static
Amethyst does
assertions.
a little.
There you go. You can actually change the logo. Static assertions here. Stock style. So yeah, you can actually tell it to, hey, use my CSS. You can use that to tweak things. So that's a fun lead for those of you who really want it to be dark mode, your own custom flavor of dark mode. In fact, I think you can get dark mode out of the box in rustdoc. Yep, there we go. Boom. Very nice. Anyway, this is my impromptu thunder talk. Longer than a lightning talk, but just as much preparation. Oh.
That's a new one. We should have more Thunder Talks from Eric.
More Thunder Talks. I'm more than happy to go into all sorts of crazy fun stuff. Like maybe we should talk about that now. What y'all want to see for next time? And by the way, I haven't forgotten about doing tutor nights with people. I still think it'd be great if we could find a technology that would accommodate breakouts into arbitrary groups. But what do y'all think? What sounds the most interesting for everybody for getting the rest support they need? Because that's the point of the meetup, right? Get people not only social support but also technical support for learning how to be a Rustation, right? So, what is it y'all need? I've heard like Daryl has talked in Discord about wanting to learn about async and await and other. How does async and rust generally work? That could be an interesting topic for next time. What else is everybody interested in?
Async await's always a good topic. So dang complicated.
All in the name of being zero cost.
Yeah.
So we have a couple people wanted to know, well, a couple, at least one person was interested in like an expert tips overview of like, here's the things that I've learned over the years that if I do it this way, you know, there was someone who might be willing to present on error messages and how to use Rust explain. And then there's also someone was interested in learning about the differences between the different types of concurrency. So the threads versus the async versus channels, and then how they compare to Python and Go and things like that. Yeah. And then there was another one about async and the Rust standard async versus some of the libraries and what's changed now that more support has landed in the language proper and in the standard library.
Yeah, so let's make some content issues here. Open a blank issue. Yeah. Is async await and the
If I present, I'm either going to present on Bevy or a light wrapper over Bevy that I'm making. So.
Oh no, that's a horrible issue.
What did you do?
To present on Bevy. Looks pretty slick. I'm guessing it's been a much better experience than what you've had to do previously for making your Rusty Sword presentations.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, my original Rusty Sword itself was just text-based, and then I did Rusty Sword Arena, which was this cobbled together bits of OpenGL and stuff like that. And but now I'm gonna make a light wrapper across Bevy and hide all of the game engine parts, and use that in my courses where I'm teaching people Rust, where I can have this little bit of a game engine, but you're just using plain Rust. You don't have to learn all the game engine concepts.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty sweet. I still need to go to one of your presentations with those. I haven't seen any of them yet.
Are you serious? You've never been to any? Yeah, you didn't even come to RustConf, man, with me. What's the deal? You avoiding me?
I know. Well, let's see. You're talking about RustConf 2019?
Yeah, well, last time we had an in-person one, yeah.
Yep. Let's see. Jacob says writing Doom in Rust is an interesting idea. Doom in Rust. I believe that exists.
He's
Doom
joking.
renderer. That's not quite the same thing. This
Is there any
pretty
language Doom
fun.
hasn't been re-implemented in?
Great question. The answer to that. Rust Doom. Yeah, it's the same project. Okay. Nice. But yeah, I definitely have opinions to offer. You were just talking now, AJ, about, okay, what are old tricks that somebody's learned? What are things that you should do? There's a whole bunch of those. I've actually tried to capture those in a crate that I am making called New Rust Project.
Huzzah!
So yeah, this is like my personal starter kit for lots of crates. This is with an eye towards published libraries specifically right now. And this is not always how you want to do stuff, but like I have metric crap tons of, look, here are all these just configurations.
Holy cow! All right.
Yeah, so there's that. That's also in main. It gets you a code of contact and license out of the box. This configures cargo release here so that it assists you in just publishing your crate. Yeah, and it gives you. This probably needs to get switched to GitHub Actions at this point, because GitHub Actions are usually better than Travis in terms of ecosystem.
Agreed.
Nate's kind of biased, though.
Okay, I'm biased. Yeah, I'll admit
it. Nate is our local GitHub employee, so
I'm proud of it.
It's a great place to work, I hear.
It is indeed.
Yeah. So yeah, if somebody wants to know about this is great. There's also a set of crates that I almost always use. GitLab. So Todd's complaining about GitLab. I'd say for GitLab, that's a great place if you want to have more closed for contribution projects but open for consumption. I say GitLab is amazing. And
have you used Git?
Git is a self-hosted option for a Git server, right?
Yeah,
and of course you're plugging your web install.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, this is the simplest way to install tons of things. Even the simplest way to install Rust. Unless you can happen to remember all of those things that are on rust.rs or setup.rs.
Rustup.rs.
Rustup.rs. See, I can't even remember the name of the domain.
All you got to remember is Rustlang and go to it.
See, with Webby, you don't have to do that. With Webby, you can be in your terminal and never go to the browser because it is simply webinstall.dev/rust. And so it is curl HTTPS webinstall.dev/rust pipe bash, and that will run the installer. I mean, it's just the same thing. It's just you don't have to go visit the website. You don't have to, because you could just know it by the name of it.
But who wants curl nowadays? Look, we got XH now.
This is interesting, maybe.
This is me kind of being a troll.
No, like, so I was actually looking for curl written in Rust because I think it's stupid that the BSD and GNU implementations of curl are different. So on webinstall.dev, you'll notice that I favor cross-platform tools. And so there are a lot of Rust and Go tools on there because they work on Windows and they work on Mac and they work on Linux. And there's no like, well, you have the BSD version on Windows and Mac, but sometimes you have the GNU version on Windows, and sometimes you have the GNU version on Mac, but you usually have the GNU version on Windows, but sometimes the BSD version or no version at all on Windows. You know, it's like these tools are tools that if you use them, they're going to work everywhere. And so if XH is something that's, but here's the thing, curl is available on Windows as well. Curl.exe. So curl is kind of already cross-platform and works everywhere with a couple of exceptions of like the, there's an option to resume downloads that is not compatible between BSD and GNU curl, but yeah.
By the way, y'all are aware, Hyper has actually made it as a backend for curl, right? This article announces that this work has started.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it has actually started to land now. So
that's because we're rewriting the world in Rust so that we can have safe things, right? I would love it. I would love it if we could just ditch all of those 1970s Unix tools for things that are sane and safe and cross-platform.
Oh yeah, people are starting to complain about this too because now we have people like the cryptography package in Python, like official Python distributions, starting to depend on Rust, and lots of people are coming out of the woodwork and understandably having some gripes about, hey, Rust isn't supported on my awkward platform.
Yeah, okay, IA64 is dead. M68K, isn't that like the original Apple from 1982?
Great question. I don't know.
HPPA is enterprise, so I like, why are they even updating their software? I mean, isn't that a mainframe? And then S90, I think, is something that's used in, I don't know. I know IA64 is the Intel, what did they call them? I forget the name for it. Was it, maybe it was still called Xeon, but back before Xeon was AMD 64?
Uh-huh.
Or Titanium or something, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if there's a reason to support those architectures, if they actually exist in the world today and not just like on things that you have to buy on eBay or that you have to go into a cave that hasn't been entered into for 20 years, then that would be great. But I just wish have you heard about Zig?
Yes.
I wish that Rust and Zig could have a baby.
Okay.
Because one of the problems that Rust reinvented that Zig did not reinvent was macros and generics. I guess that's two problems. And also cross compilation. Like, I don't know why Rust reinvented that problem, because it seems like it was a problem we knew we didn't want, but yet here we are.
It's a heck of a lot easier than on C and C++. Zig makes it an absolute breeze, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, I think that Rust could adopt that. I don't think that Rust could realistically adopt the, I mean, it's got some of the same principles where the compiler pretty much runs Rust because it's so, the compiler is so advanced, it's pretty much interpreting Rust to understand what it should give you warnings and errors and fix suggestions about. And it's too bad that they didn't just go one step further with that for the macro system. I am sad that it has a macro system that is separate from the language. It's not just metaprogramming.
Oh, one of these things I need to do is I need to start hacking on New Shell, because I think New Shell could be an incredible way to go forward. I don't know if anybody has played with it yet.
So
but-
tell me more about it. What it's like a replacement for Bash, right? That's what it is.
Right, cross-platform, and it kind of it further experiments in the spaces that have been done for having more tabular data structures rather than just stringly typed data structures when you're passing data around in shells. So PowerShell does that.
Indeed it does. Which is also available on webinstall.dev, by the way, and
There you go.
cross-platform.
Yeah, PowerShell is now a cross-platform thing, guys. You can write your PowerShell scripts anywhere.
Well, this is nice because you can test on Mac without booting up a virtual machine.
Yeah, so this is also a potentially interesting topic, a fun tools thing for people to present on. So Shell has a bunch of built-in commands that kind of standardize what you get out of your command. So it's like it has half of a Unix toolbox for you. And then other things like, go ahead.
Is it Bash compatible? Because that I feel is
Absolutely
essential.
not.
That's a problem. That's a problem. If you make a shell, you need to make it. It needs to at least be Bash compatible with the existing.
Does it
program.
really? I mean, that means you're gonna be compatible with a lot of bugs forever and a lot of pain points.
Okay,
Yeah,
you
I
need
It's hard to
disagree.
write correct Bash.
80-20. It needs to do the basic things that a person does, because like you're not going to run scripts in anything but Bash. That's always going to be the case
So do you
for the end of
mean
time.
compatible, or do you mean similar?
Okay, I guess I don't mean like 100. I don't mean 100% congruent. I mean that a person who is familiar with Bash can sit down and do simple things like a for loop and have it work, or copy and paste some code off of a forum, that's like pipe this to that and use a variable and use xargs or something. It needs to not
I daily
completely
use it,
break
and
the system.
It can mostly do a lot of those, but to be fair, it is on version 0.28, and so it's not feature complete by any means. But like from what I've been able to use out of it, it's I haven't really missed too much. There's been a couple times where I've noticed that I need to get into Bash so I can actually run this the way it's intended, but it has a basic scripting language for itself that's similar-ish to Bash from what I've seen. But it is very opinionated. It does kind of its own thing a lot of the time.
I'm also going to counter that you don't really want to invent a new shell with new ideas specifically for the people that are going to copy paste Bash commands from Stack Overflow and run them. Like, that's really not your target audience to start with.
I disagree from the perspective, like, think about the world that we live in where it's a mass of blind leading the blind. And like for me, I want to see a world where we have better tools that are safer and easier to use that new people can pick up, because no boot camp is ever going to recommend use New Shell, right? And nobody doing online instruction is ever going to recommend New Shell. But if you have something like, for example, RG and grep are completely the same until you get down to regular expressions, right? For all of the top 20 ways that you would use grep, RG functions identically, except better.
In what way, AJ? I mean, that's not true in any way, because RG by itself is closer to grep-ir than anything, and that from the start is quite a difference.
But
yeah, it's starting with a subset.
I mean, that's the way that it just means that you don't have to type it.
Right.
You know,
but
like
your
it does
premise of
it does
the
all the
same
reasonable
isn't
things on
true.
default. Hmm?
I'm saying your premise doesn't hold. Your premise that it has to be the same or look so similar, it isn't.
But it is. Like you can anybody who uses grep, if you show them RG, it doesn't take more than 15 seconds for them to understand it and want to switch. It is completely ergonomic. They don't have to
but
change
that's a
any of the things
different
that they've
point.
learned.
I mean, I agree with that point, but that's a different point.
But they don't have to learn anything new. They just start using RG and all the flags are the same.
In new shell, I'm able to, like, I'm a super duper casual terminal user, and so I don't have a whole lot of fancy stuff I do. And for me, I've only even at like 0.28 version, the difference for my usage is minimal. Granted, I don't like do hardly any scripting, and I only alias a couple things, but a lot of the commands are named the same as in Bash for the most part, and so like I hadn't had a whole lot of trouble just switching over from Bash to new. But granted, it's like when you get deeper into it, it's going to be very, very different.
Can we talk about their choice of name though? Like this is impossible to talk about in conversation. Like, yeah, just search for new shell. I mean, NU, not NEW. And don't forget that.
New shell like nougat.
Yes. I understand how clever it is.
Same problem there.
Or new shell like GNU.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of new skin all the time. Every time I open it up, I'm like, new skin, new shell.
That's a Utah-centric problem.
That's true.
See, and when I hear it out loud, I hear GNU shell.
Have you sought help for this? I don't. Yeah, no, I did. After I searched for new shell NEW, I thought maybe they're saying new with GN, and then I saw it on Eric's screen of new shell, and yeah.
Exactly.
How about connecting? Let's connect it with Rust. Rust is very different to languages because it has the borrow checker lifetimes scopes, and that gives some pain. But we do choose it. We have chosen it because of the benefits. So it's not just some minor benefits, but it's major, right? So big step. So maybe the same for new shell.
That's an excellent point. I like that analogy.
Well, Rust is C compatible. I can use C modules. I can export C modules. So it gives me a gateway that is pretty seamless from the perspective of the core thing that you want in a programming language that isn't C is that it works with C.
Well, I would say that yes, if you're talking about the audience of people that care about that, but like the same thing could be said about Go, except it's not really C compatible in the same way, like at all.
You can't export to C, but you can import C.
Yeah, and
not
that was
being
kind of
able
an
to export
afterthought,
C
right?
is a reason that people dislike it. Like Python is only popular because right now, not when it was invented, but the only reason Python is popular today is because it's C compatible. Otherwise, nobody would use it.
Everything,
because it has the ML libraries and SciPy, and those are all written in C. Those aren't written in Python. So if somebody were to port the ML libraries and SciPy to Rust, we would have no need for Python. It would be completely useless as a language.
Technically, most of NumPy and SciPy are in C. That's why they're fast.
Right. So if somebody just like grabbed those over in Rust, we'd have no need for Python anymore, which would be wonderful. It's a good language. Well, it was for the time period.
On a different topic, Eric, it intrigued me that you brought up cargo release. I just started using that. I think Monday or last Saturday, and you had your config all preset up there. Is there any gotchas I should watch out for, or any like cool, awesome features that I should be using? Like I did add a what is it? A post-release, no, pre-release updating of the README and the changelog. That was really cool. Anything else I should be looking out for?
A couple things for cargo release workflows specifically. Honestly, you should just pretty much. I really strongly prefer having a dev, a pre-release suffix in the package versions, and cargo release really helps you to do that. Right, that makes it a lot easier to be bouncing around somebody's code, look at the cargo table and say, oh, okay, cool, we're using development version. I can't assume that this is going to have the same contents as a published version of docs. So that's one thing I like. The other thing too is that it's kind of up in the air what the best terminal solution is for managing releases right now. I've actually been taking a look at cargo workspaces. So I can share my screen again. This is something that has been getting a fair amount of attention recently. And this seems to do a superset of things that cargo release does. Cargo release is really optimized for, I have a single root level crate in this Git repository that I'm working with, and boom, we work with that. Cargo Workspaces was designed from the beginning to work with more complicated use cases. Like I have a whole bunch of workspaces and maybe their versions need to be kept in sync, right? Cargo Release does that to a degree, but I have found it unsatisfactory for some more complicated stuff. So this is something I have been experimenting with.
So for me, where I just barely started using cargo release, I used it exactly once for one release. Would you encourage me to go check out and consider doing cargo workspaces instead, since I haven't really gotten started or into the groove with cargo releases?
I'd say do it just for the science. If you are happy with how cargo release is working for your current crate and you don't foresee your crate getting broken into a more complicated workspace later, then cargo release is a pretty refined tool. So I'd say the strength of argument for switching away from it is probably not nearly as strong as what if you just want to tinker? And that's what I would encourage.
Right. I don't have workspaces currently because my rusty engine, I just started over, and so it is now empty, but it was a workspace before with several crates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say just play with it and see how things are different, because a lot of it's going to be in addition to whatever configuration of crates you end up with in source code, right? So you can play with both on the same project.
Cool. I just love automation.
Automation is so great.
The tooling in Rust. I was just talking on my little community about how awesome it is. Just the doc. I didn't know this doc stuff existed, and I haven't had anything like this since Java C# days, which are well behind me. And this is nice.
Yeah, nice things. Like we have some nice things that others don't have. I mean, that's not how it usually is with systems programming languages.
Oh heavens, no. Most people have Stockholm syndrome in the C and C++ worlds. It takes a very open mind compared to the average from what I've seen in C and C++ for somebody to say, oh, look, I can have that cool flow like you kids have with NPM in JavaScript, right? Like, no, you can have a flow that's just like that and maybe even better.
Yeah, no kidding. I remember trying to get Doxygen working once for a C project, and I never quite got it working, even though I worked on it for hours and hours and hours. It's very frustrating.
I wonder if you could feed Rust docs into like a Swagger documentation as well, or I guess OpenAPI now. Like if you could just use one in-code document set to generate all of your different docs, that would be interesting.
That'd be nice.
That might be a pipe dream. I might be thinking about something that's a really dumb idea, but
You got to get through the dumb ideas to get to the awesome ones. It's not around. It's not the other way. It's through.
And some dumb ideas are just great ideas that are still fragile and haven't had time to grow yet. So
True. There's a great book. In fact, what is it? Like the Power of Stupid Ideas or something like that.
never heard of that.
Fantastic book. Yeah. I should read it again. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, that does sound pretty awesome.
It basically just runs through a whole bunch of scenarios where people had these stupid ideas and kept pushing. And now, we all think it's like, well, obvious, right? But no, it was a stupid idea to start with. Everyone thought it was insane.
So is Rust adoption in workplaces steadily climbing?
It is steadily increasing. I did job hunts last year for about 6 months, just doing Rust-only positions. Finally landed a job at NZXT, and I saw exponentially more Rust jobs than I did when I had done job hunting the year before. And the pace has only increased. I have people reaching out to me fairly frequently and about Rust stuff now. I'd say once every 3 weeks or so. And I will often just say, hey, talk to people in the Rust meetup.
When you left Vivint, did they stop using Rust, or is there still Rust in there?
They're still using Rust. So, yeah, Vivint is a great place to work. I would definitely recommend it. If you see an open position there working on the VIP team is what it's called. Or maybe some of the other teams have started using Rust there too, like their camera firmware. That could be really sweet. I think some of their ops pipelines for data science specifically are also being done using Rust.
That surprises me.
I've seen some action on Rust being used more for infrastructure, for I'll call it for data engineering. The data science stuff is still using other tools, but basically people say, how do I get the high throughput necessary to do all this big data, and seeing more and more stuff there showing up in Rust. So it used to be I would only see jobs for cryptocurrency or, Bitcoin and so forth in Rust. Now I'm seeing more and more stuff coming out in other places.
Right. Yeah.
That's really interesting to me. I still mostly see people in the data space using Java and Python. Typically Python running on like a Java project, like a Spark or a Beam or something like that.
So the rest of I've seen, I must admit, is more of the startup, the people who are disruptors saying, hey, you're never going to get, I was looking at, what was that company, Eric Wallaroo? As an example, the startup was just saying, hey, compared to using something which is Java-based, we can do it twice as fast and 1/4 the memory.
Oh, they're overselling themselves on the memory side. I guarantee it.
Over or under?
Well, they're overselling how much that they can do less. Like, what? So my side project with my friend is data processing, just in-stream redirection stuff, and we can process and move tons more data than any of the Apache projects, like a Druid or a Spark or things like that. And because we're not using Java, we're not using 64 gigs of RAM like you would if you were running like a Spark. It's really easy to approach that with like 100 megs of RAM or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's typically the big data, like the Hadoop model and everything that spawned from it in the Apache world. I say Apache because that's where all the big data projects go to die. They're all based in Java, and they're all based on this distributed load everything into memory, and then process it in the cluster, and then spit it back out into a disk somewhere like an S3 or something. So, but again, this is encouraging to me that there's a lot of Rust jobs or Rust startups out there approaching this, because I think that I agree with that space needs some disruption and some better tooling and some smart people approaching it that way.
Yeah, I always love reading the sort of the postmortems that people post on when they've migrated an API, a production API, from one language to another, and end up at Rust eventually, and just see this like really low line on the graph. Always fun.
Yeah, I used to work at a very large company where the CIO would never consider any technology where it wasn't easy for him to go out and hire 300 people in it. And I think Rust still suffers a bit from that, but I think the foundation that came out recently and the names behind it and Amazon talking more about what they're doing, I think it's getting more and more attention from not just the startups or medium size, but I think there's going to be a lot of people who are holding on to Java with their and until it becomes they're the laggards. They're going to wait until you can easily go out and hire 500 people. But I just feel we're 3 years away from an inflection point where there's going to be enough products out there showing it. There'll be a rush to go hire Rust developers because it'll be seen as a safe thing to do at that point. I don't think it's going to throw away Java. I just think that for certain tasks, Rust will be seen as an advantage to do. Java still, I think, will be larger, but I think that there's a lot of stuff in Java that will be done in Rust starting in about 3 years.
Peter has a completely unrelated question in the chat.
Yeah, I think I figured it out. Once I installed this Rust search extension, is this how I use it? I type rs space and then what I want to search for?
Correct.
I was so confused because it's so fast. I thought it was not doing its job.
I think it's pre-caching quite a bit. So as soon as you type rs, it already knows to load the cache. And then by the time you've hit space, then it's live searching what it's preloaded.
Speaking of Rust jobs, just if anybody comes across any or knows about any, be sure to post them in the job hunting channel on the Discord so that we can get all the Rust love shared around.
Will somebody post that invite link in the channel real quick for those that are not yet there?
What invite link?
Oh, here it is. I've got it.
So if you're looking for a Rust job, the This Week in Rust newsletter has always got a job section, and the monthly Hacker News, Who's Hiring, if you just search the page for Rust, that's a good resource as well.
Also, there is every Rust release, there is a hiring mega thread that is posted for that corresponding to that version. My team posts there, and there are open positions on my team right now, by the way, for anybody who wants to work with gaming hardware. And
when you say
Windows.
mega thread, what do you mean?
That's what it's called, a mega thread. A mega thread in Reddit is a focal point. Sorry, this is on Reddit, by the way. I didn't include that context.
Okay, so Reddit.
Yeah, a mega thread is basically a focal point for discussion of some form, right? In this case, rather than having everybody post their job descriptions in their own individual threads, it is recommended that people consolidate inside of the mega thread. So there is that too. And in Hacker News, there's also the reach out to.
That was interesting. Did that happen to everyone else?
Yeah, audio dropped out.
Oh,
I had video drop out too.
Yeah.
I think the computer is tired of hearing me talk.
I got kicked off entirely. I had to reconnect.
Oh, man.
No. Maybe Jitsi had an issue and it hiccuped. Regardless, yeah, the job thing I'm watching because I think I will end up programming in Rust for the job within the next few years, like I think many of us will. I think it'll be a high probability that we'll end up in that world.
I've seen a lot of attitudes change inside of GitHub towards Rust. To be clear, Rust is not a popular language within GitHub yet.
Yeah.
But
You're still
there has been a
Rubyists,
lot of
right?
attitude change. There's a lot of Ruby in GitHub, that's for sure. And there's also a ton of Go. And if you're over in the big data section, there's a lot of Java. And in certain sections, there's a lot of C#.
That okay.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see Rust experimentation and stuff happening inside your own company. It's fun.
I still want to see more tooling around WASM and such come out. I know it's still progressing well, but I think that's going to be my particular job focus. But
Tooling around what?
tooling around WASM, WebAssembly.
Oh, okay. WebAssembly, got it.
Yeah. Like I would love to see, like Netlify is actually a high WebAssembly place. They basically run WebAssembly as a function on the edge, and that's their bread and butter and why they have that speed that they have. And you know, I'm a big Kubernetes fan. I enjoy not having to deal with an ops group at all. So I want to see that same kind of tooling that Docker orchestration has towards like the WASM world, and I think Rust is going to lead there. So it's encouraging to see the tool chains that we have that are nice things, and I think they'll extend to that. And yeah, this is all very good, very exciting.
I agree. Well, hey, thanks everyone. I've got to run myself. I just want to say thank you again, Eric, for the presentation, and thank you everybody for the fun conversation. We'll see you later.
All right. Take care. See y'all, everybody. I'm also hopping.
Adios.
Yep. Cheers, everybody. Wait, let me kick you. Oh yeah, you have to kick me. I forgot. Go ahead, Jacob. Kick me.
I did it. Later.